Welcome to the midweek edition of the Morning Pitt here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Post-game edition, midweek edition, Wednesday edition, whatever you want to call it. The day after Valentine's Day edition. It's the Morning Pitt here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Of course, the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. Football, basketball, recruiting, everything you need to know about Pitt sports, you're going to find it right there, Panther-Lair.com, and the message boards where people were talking certainly all night last night and into today about Pitt's win over Boston College at the Peterson Event Center last night. Before we get into that game, of course, I got to ask you, make sure you like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We appreciate that so we can get those numbers up. Big numbers guy over here. We like the numbers. That's what everybody who's on YouTube is for. Everybody's on YouTube for the numbers. So help us get the numbers by liking and subscribing. We appreciate that for sure. So I want to jump into this game last night. 77-58 win for Pitt over Boston College. The Eagles did not come into this game as one of the better teams in the ACC. As a matter of fact, they were at the bottom of the ACC, 12-14 overall, 6-9 in the conference entering the game last night. And certainly, I think if you had two teams with these two records, Pitt going into that game last night, 18-7, 11-3, Boston College going into it 12-14, 6-9, you would have certain expectations about how it was going to play out. With Boston College fresh off a 30-point loss to NC State at home, and Pitt just sort of rolling right now. Last Tuesday, they beat they get their own 30-point win when they beat Louisville. They kind of grind out an 8-point win over Florida State on Saturday, and all the wins that led into the Louisville win, those three last possession games. And we talked about that stuff a lot. And so you expect a Pitt-Boston College game to go a certain way. And while it ultimately did, early on, it didn't. Early on, it was a pretty close game. I mean, really, for the better part of the first almost 12 minutes, you would say that this game was not going the way you would have expected it to go. Pitt jumped out to a 10-5 lead, but really Boston College kind of took over to some extent. Outscored Pitt 19-7 over the next about 6 minutes or so until right around the 8-minute mark. Boston College had a 24-17 lead on Pitt, and I think at that point, probably a lot of people were thinking, well, I'm curious. I shouldn't make assumptions about what you were thinking, but certainly someone could have said, oh, geez, is there an upset brewing here? Pitt's down 12 minutes into the game against a team that they should be, crushing. A team that NC State just, beat by 30, 92-62. Pitt should be doing much better than this. And I imagine, there have to be some people out there who were thinking that. But it's funny because as I was sitting at the Peterson Event Center last night and I'm watching that game, and it gets to that point where it's 24-17. I've got it all written down, lots of notes here. I just remember thinking to myself, and I think I even said it, it was, who was I sitting next to? I was sitting, Zeiss, Paul Zeiss came in, and so I was sitting there, I was chatting with him, and I really wasn't concerned for Pitt's chances at that point, even when they were down 7, even when, they let their 5-point lead kind of disappear, and they end up trailing Boston College 12 minutes into the game. I looked at that game, I looked at these two teams and I said, pretty sure Pitt's going to be fine. We have a little group text going on with the Panther-Lair basketball writers, myself and Jim Hammett and Steve Gertz and Houston Wilson and Matt Steinberg. And, we'll text through the week, just catch up on content things. And then during games sometimes. And you could ask those guys, they have the text messages. There was no concern. I was almost 100% sure Pitt was going to not only come back, but come back and win handily. A comfortable victory. And there were a few reasons for that. Number one, and not the least of which, but it's not one we're going to dwell on too much here. Boston College opened that game 4 of 8 from outside the arc. Now, I was pretty sure they weren't going to keep shooting like that. As a matter of fact, I was pretty sure their shooting was going to fall off. And I even had a bit of a suspicion that after starting 4-8, that starting 4-8 from outside might actually be a bad thing for that team. They're not a great 3-point shooting team, but if they start a game 4 of 8, they're going to be convinced that they can keep shooting like that, and they're going to fail rather spectacularly. And sure enough, they opened 4 of 8. They hit one of their next 5 to finish the first half, so they went into halftime 5 of 13. Not terrible, but not great. They finished the game 9 of 26. So after they go 4 of 8 on their first 8, they hit 4 of their first 8 3-point attempts. They made 5 of their next 18 over the rest of the game. And part of it was they had to shoot threes to try to get back into the game. It's not like they were totally convinced that they were a 3-point shooting team. But seeing that, I said, they're not going to be able to keep shooting like this. And conversely, Pitt was 2 of 7 to open the game. They finished 9 of 18 the rest of the way, from outside. And so I kind of looked at both of those things. I said, Boston College is not going to keep shooting the way they're shooting, and Pitt's going to shoot much better than they are. The shots are going to fall. They weren't taking bad shots. They were taking good shots, and we know these guys are good shooters. And so those shots are going to fall as long as they keep taking them. They did keep taking them. Shots did fall, and they pulled away and won the game. And so that was, one reason I had confidence at that 24-17 mark. But more than that, and this was not something I could tangibly point to in the box score like I could, Boston College was 4 of 8 from 3. They're not going to keep that up. I can point to that in the box score, and I can kind of find evidence of it to back it up, to support the claim, I guess. But more to it, more than that, I looked at this game. I looked at Boston College with a lead, and I said, Pitt is going to come back. They're going to win this game, and they're going to win comfortably, because not only are they a better team than Boston College, they're an older team, a more mature team, and a team that I don't think is going to lose its composure. Guys like Nelly Cummings, who pop up on the screen here, guys like Jamarius Burton, guys like Blake Hinson and Greg Elliott, although they're two of the more emotional players on the team, these guys have been around a long time. And this team, quite frankly, now, they're 25, 26 games into the season. They've been around a long time. This is not a new team anymore. Jamie Dixon, and he's not alone in this regard, he used to say that, by the time you got to January or February, freshmen were no longer freshmen. Freshmen were sophomores because they played so much basketball. They've been around so much basketball that they're not new guys anymore. And I think you would certainly say that absolutely about a guy like Federico. But all the veteran players on this team, I don't think they allow the team to lose its composure. I don't get the sense that Jeff Capel has a lot of concern about that happening. When we talked to him after the game last night, he said he felt comfortable the whole time because he heard how the players were talking to each other. He heard how they were talking in the huddle, the things they were saying to each other, the positive energy, he said. They were very encouraging. They were very confident. And while confidence isn't going to get you everywhere, I think it does help if it keeps you stay calm. If it keeps you calm, if it keeps you from panicking, if it keeps you focused. Confidence can be a good thing if it allows you to stay kind of in the moment, as Jeff Capel often says. And like I say, sort of stay focused and not start to fret about the fact that you're losing. These guys knew they would come back, and they weren't going to wait for somebody else to make the plays to come back. You know what I mean? I think sometimes confidence could create a bit of a problem there. If you say, "Oh, no problem, we'll come back. Don't worry," and then all of a sudden you're 5 minutes to go in the second half, you're still down by 8 or 9. I think they're old enough and smart enough to avoid that trap and avoid falling into that. So when they get down in a game like this, they're confident they can come back and win because they know they're good enough to do it. They just have to get down to doing what they do. And I think they did. They go from down 24-17 to being up by 9 at halftime. Boston College cuts that lead down to 5 points about 4 minutes into the second half, makes it a 44-39 game, and Pitt just takes over. I think it's funny sometimes when you will sort of look for like trends and runs in basketball games. 44-39, the run there is to the end of the game, a 33-19 advantage for Pitt. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, where do you draw a line? I guess you could say that from 44-39 up until the point where it was 68-41, which was a stretch of about about 8 minutes. And Pitt went up 68-41. They were plus 27, which was their biggest lead in the game. I mean, they just took over. They just took control of the game, and they have a lot of guys who can do it. They have Jamarius Burton who can take control of a game. They have Nelly Cummings who can take control of a game. Nike Sabandi can take control of a game. Blake Hinson can take control of a game. I mean, that's how many guys did I just name? I lost count. Even Greg Elliott, to some extent, I think if you get him the ball in the right spots, can take control of a game. And they've got 4 or 5 guys who literally, or legitimately, I should say, and we can even set Elliott aside. I mean, he's not going to take control of a game the way that Sabandi or Hinson or Burton or Cummings will. We've got 4 guys who legitimately can take control of a game with their own scoring, with their shot creation, and what they do to set up their teammates. And when you've got that, it's really hard to keep a team down. And so you look at this game last night, and you look at the final box score. Blake Hinson ends up being the leading scorer. And I'll talk about Hinson in a second because I've got some thoughts there. But Greg Elliott scores 14. He goes 4 of 9 from the floor. All 4 of his baskets were 3-pointers. Nelly Cummings scores 11 and hands out 8 assists. Jamarius Burton, only 10 points, but he gets 3 assists. Scores 6 of his points at the free throw line and also grabs 5 rebounds. And so kind of had a well-rounded game. Nike Sabandi makes some baskets in the second half, makes 3 field goals. Well, he had 1 field goal in the first half that was a goaltending, and then he made 2 baskets in the second half. I thought played pretty well in those minutes. But this team is able to just hit you in waves. And we've talked about this for a while, that you're going to get what you're going to get out of Jamarius Burton. He had a quiet game last night, but still had a huge impact on the outcome. You can probably count on him for scoring in the mid to high teens on a pretty regular basis. 2 out of every 3 games, 3 out of every 4. You're going to get there. The question is, who else is going to step up around him? And it's always somebody, and it's often multiple guys in every game. For a stretch, it'll be Nelly Cummings. For a stretch, it'll be Blake Hinson. For a stretch, it'll be Greg Elliott. Now, last night was Blake Hinson's night. He was on fire. 7 of 15 from the floor, 6 of 11 from 3, 21 points, 7 rebounds, no assists, but only 1 turnover, 1 steal. I mean, just an outstanding game. He was on fire. And I've really come around on the thought that Blake Hinson is the X factor for this team. That when he's going good, they are almost impossible to stop. Because you're going to get what you're going to get out of Jamarius Burton. You're probably going to get good 3-point shooting from Greg Elliott. And occasionally clutch shot making and shot creation from Nelly Cummings. But when you have Blake Hinson going, it's very, very difficult to contain this Pitt team. It really is. When his shots are falling and when he's playing aggressive, physical, and bully ball, as they called it on Saturday, as I think Dan Bonner said it, when he's playing that way, they are really, really tough to beat. And I think he is the X factor. I think he's that guy who can put them over the top. And, he had a whole lot to do with the win last night. But to my original point, though, when you've got all of these guys and they're all veteran players and they're all older, there is a sense of confidence that they're going to be able to beat just about anybody they play. And they're going to be able to win these last-second clutch play, one-possession games. They're going to be able to blow out inferior opponents like they did against Louisville and Boston College. And if they have to grind a game out and just kind of stay really in the moment and just try to stay 1 or 2 possessions ahead the whole time, they can do that too. They are really capable of all these things, and it's expected now. I don't think there was a lot of concern when Pitt was down 24-17 last night. I think Pitt fans have come to expect this team to come up with the plays, to make the plays they need to make. Probably, and the reason Pitt fans expect it is because they keep doing it. They keep doing it really, really well. Federico keeps doing things really, really well. He had 10 points and 7 rebounds last night, 4 offensive boards, 3 more blocks. He just keeps rolling. I had the stats yesterday on the Morning Pitt where he was like 6.4 points and 7 rebounds and 3 blocks per game over the 5-game winning streak. Those numbers are all going to go up. The rebounds will stay the same. The points will go up a little bit. The rebounds will come up a little bit. The blocks will come up a little bit. He is just, it's really remarkable And I said it during the Florida State game. I put it on Twitter. I think I talked about it on the Morning Pitt on Monday, that, there have been so many guys that come through the Pitt program who get better over the course of their careers, or get better even over the course of a season. I can't think of another guy who has made as drastic an improvement as Federico. And when I did the rankings yesterday, the newcomers, and I ranked all 6 of the newcomers who have played, 1 or 2 people said, Federico should be higher. I think somebody even had Federico number 1, because if he wasn't here, none of this would be happening. And it's interesting. I wouldn't put him number 1. I still think Hinson is number 1, and I'm still a big Nelly Cummings guy. I think Nelly Cummings is number 2. But if you want to tell me that Federico is the number 3 biggest, most impactful and most important newcomer on this team, I'm not going to argue with you. It was a circumstance, and an unfortunate circumstance that created his opportunity. But he has seized it, particularly since ACC play started. Jeff Capel said it last night. What we heard some of the broadcasters saying on TV, that he might be one of the best defensive players in the conference right now. And if he keeps putting up the block numbers, I feel like defensive player of the year is, or the all defensive team or whatever it is, can be a challenging thing for voters to decide on because it's tough to quantify. But if he keeps putting up the blocks numbers that he's got, he's going to get a lot of attention. And he's already got the name recognition. He's already got the brand recognition value of being Federico. But then you put in the block numbers, and if he goes for 10-7, 10-7-3 a lot of nights, he's going to get that recognition, and it's going to keep elevating. His profile is going to keep elevating, and rightfully so, because it's been remarkable to watch. And just as all these pieces have come together, Nelly Cummings bringing the point guard experience and the leadership, and Greg Elliott bringing the 3-point shooting, and Blake Hinson bringing just the multitude of ways he can beat you, and Jamarius Burton continuing to be himself and being able to really flourish in his natural role, and Nike Sabandi being that spark off the bench. And then there's Federico just sort of filling it out. Again, in an opportunity that he got because John Hughley was hurt, and then, had to effectively take the year off. It was an opportunity that opened up for Federico. I don't think anyone was excited about it. He probably was, but I don't think anyone was excited about the prospect of him being the primary center. But he has absolutely grown into the role, and he has been outstanding. Played 30 minutes last night. He was actually, pretty much tied for the second most minutes on the team. And like I say, he puts up 10-7. Didn't really shoot free throws very well, but, what are you going to do? And did a great defensive job on Quinton Post. Quinton Post was Boston College's best player and their biggest threat, and he had 7 and 5. Federico outplayed Quinton Post. So if you're going to put Quinton Post on an all-ACC team, at least based on last night, you got to put Federico ahead of him because he outplayed him. Quinton Post goes 2 of 9 from the floor. Like I say, 7 points and 5 rebounds. Fouled out in the game. 2 assists and 4 turnovers. Federico had 2 fouls. He was 10-7, 4 of 9 from the floor. 2 turnovers as opposed to 4. He was, and that was his assignment. You know what I mean? He was facing off against Post a lot in this game. And Post was trying to defend him a lot in this game. And I think Federico got the better of it on both ends of the court. And what's exciting, I think, maybe the most exciting thing about Federico, aside from his long-term future, is the short-term. Because so much of the improvement we've seen has come in the last, month and a half. I would say since the beginning of January, we've seen him improve by leaps and bounds over the past 5 weeks, 6 weeks. And so to think he's got another 6 weeks of this season, or 4 weeks, or 5 weeks, or whatever it ends up being, even, I think he is going to keep getting better. And Jeff Capel talked last night about his confidence and how comfortable he's getting on the court. I think he's going to continue to get more confidence. And as he does, I think he'll be more aggressive and ultimately more effective. We've said it all along. He's not going to get any stronger, but he can get more comfortable and confident on the court and more aggressive as a result of it. And I think the result, it'll end up being really impressive. And he'll be even better than he's already been, which is saying something because he's been pretty good so far. It's funny. I almost sat down today and just said, ho hum, Pitt wins again. Because that's sort of, I mean, it's not how it feels. It was a 19-point win at home. They control, dominated a game. They controlled a game. They've won 6 games in a row. Their first ever 6-game winning streak in conference games as a member of the ACC. They've set a new record for ACC wins in a season. They've got 12 now. Previous record was 11. They won 11-7 in their first year as members of the conference. I mean, this is, it pretty much has surpassed every possible measure for being the Pitt's best season as a member of the ACC. I don't think there's any question about it at this point. The only thing that's left to find out is kind of where they get seeded and how they enter the ACC tournament. But this has been Pitt's best season as a member of the ACC, and they're showing no signs of slowing down either. You're not really seeing any cracks begin to form. If anything, they seem to be getting better and getting stronger and getting more and more comfortable and confident playing together. Maybe we just need to see them play like another big team again. You know what I mean? They had that run with Wake, more particularly Miami, Carolina, but maybe we've been watching them play Louisville and Florida State and Boston College for a while. Maybe they need to get back into some of these bigger games. They still have a little while to go. Now, Saturday's game at Virginia Tech is going to be a challenge. We'll certainly have a lot to talk about on that front on Friday. But the last thought I had, I was disappointed, or I was thinking to myself during the game last night that it would be nice, or it would have been nice to get like North Carolina or Duke late in the season, like a Saturday afternoon game. Get one of those really big games, and they'll have the Syracuse game, but I think that's on a Tuesday, right? Syracuse is on the 25th. That's a Saturday. Okay, so maybe that one will draw them out. But it would be nice to have one of these big games because the Peterson Event Center is filling in and it's getting good crowds. But I think a really big game is what they need to really blow the roof off the place. And I think Syracuse is the kind of one that they could potentially do it. Carolina and Duke would draw the biggest crowds. Syracuse will draw a pretty big crowd. They'll bring some Syracuse fans, but I think a lot of Pitt fans will come out for that on a Saturday night at 5 p.m. That should be a really lively crowd. That place is getting closer and closer to what it once was. It's not there yet, but it's getting there. And maybe that Syracuse game, which I think is the home finale, right? They play Georgia Tech next Tuesday, and then they have Syracuse the following Saturday as the home finale. I think that could be just an awesome environment. You know what I mean? Really get it back to what it used to be, where you can't hear the person next to you, which would be a lot of fun. For sure, a lot of fun. But anyway, Pitt improves to 19-7? Look at these guys. There was a time when we talked about what they could do to get to 20 wins, what they could do to get in the NCAA tournament. Here they are, 19-7 overall, 12-3 in the ACC, a lock for the NCAA tournament, headed straight for, on a collision course with a double bye in the ACC tournament. And they're just keep rolling. Take care of business again against Boston College. So we'll have a lot to talk about on the rest of the morning pits, the rest of the week. Of course, tonight we have the Panther-Lair show. That's live at 8:30 p.m. right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So make sure you tune in for that. Join the conversation about everything going on in Pitt sports. And it's another good night at the Peterson Event Center last night. So we'll talk about it tonight on the live show and more on the Morning Pit the rest of the week. Stay tuned to Panther-Lair.com for all your Pitt sports coverage. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks for tuning in this morning. We appreciate it. Hope you have a great Wednesday. Hope it's been a great week so far. And we'll talk to you tomorrow morning on the Morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.